We're in the 16th parak of Ma'aser Korbanos. Okay. How to make a korban? How do you make a korban, by the way? Well, there's all sorts of ways. The first step is you have to have the will to do it, and then you have to promise it to God, right? So there's called a hikdish or hifrish. Hikdish means a person says, this is dedicated to the temple, or this is supposed to be a korban. And then there's also hifrish, means he had already taken upon himself to bring a korban, or for whatever reason, naturally he's had an obligation. What kind of natural obligations to bring korban does a person have? A person who sins has to bring a chatas. A person who's sinned in another way has to bring an asham. A woman who's given birth has to bring certain korbanos. A person who's cured of his tzaras has to bring some korbanos. I guess the Nazir, depending on what his situation, he completed his Nazirus or he has become Tameh. He has a natural obligation. Or a holiday rolls around. Right now, you have no reason to make a korban, right? But once, let's say, Pesach rolls around, you're going to have to set aside some animals for your korbanos, right? So in that case, we don't say hikdish. The choice of verb is hifrish. What does that mean? Because he already had an obligation for whatever reason, and now he just has to go pick the animal for that purpose. Okay, that's a very important, I guess vocabulary here. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, hikdish and hifrish, but sometimes hifrish means there was already some sort of obligation, and now we're just picking the animal for it. So it says, Haray alai olah. A person promises to bring a burnt offering to God, but he didn't say what type of animal, right? An olah could be, a sheep, or it could be an ox. There's a big difference, right? One's much bigger and much more expensive. With hifrish, sure. So he set aside an ox for that purpose, hifrish. Winighnav, and it was stolen. Goodbye. Poter asmo b'seh. So he exempts himself. That is, he discharges his obligation to bring the korban that he'd already said, a burnt offering. So we'll bring a lamb. Aseh is much smaller. It's not even an aisle. Okay, it's the younger kind. We got a question come in. Hold on 1 second. I think this is a question about what we're doing. So hold on. Please hold on. Please hold on. Where were we? Yes. Okay. So he's discharged his obligation by giving something else. Amar shor zeh with amau alai olah. He says, this particular ox and its value are upon me as I take it upon myself as an olah. So now he sort of connected it. Now he said this shore. Hukba. Now it's set. Okay. Now he said it this. So because he actually mentioned shore and its value, so if for whatever reason that shore becomes disqualified, so he has to replace it. Before in the first clause in the ratio, he said, okay, he was supposed to bring this ox. That ox is gone. Okay, so bring a sheep instead. Now he doesn't have that option. He has to bring, with the value of this first shore, an actual other shore, which is an ox. Why do people keep sending these things? Okay, next. Homer echad mikvasai. Kvasai means my sheep. Hekdesh. How many sheep does he have? I don't know. Let's say he has a whole flock. Is a sheep within a flock batul? One sheep lost among the flock, is it batul? No, it can't be. Okay. Well, echad mi shwarai hekdesh, and one of my oxen is also hekdesh. That's a problem. Vaylu shnayim. Oh, but he has only two of them, so you assume hagadol shebehem hekdesh. So the bigger one, the bigger, better one, that works. Hayush losha. So there's three of them. Hagadol shebehem hekdesh v'chosheshim levenoni. So the biggest one is certainly hektish. We also have a chashash that the second one is also the medium one. Keitzad ya'aseh. So what should he do? Yamtin levenoni ad sheipol b'wum. So he waits for the second one the medium one to develop a blemish. Like I said, the Uriah ad sheyistayev. V'tachul hakadusha al gadol levado. And then the holiness will fall upon only the bigger one. Yeah, but let's say it doesn't happen that way. Let's say the bigger one develops a moon before this Benoni. Okay. If he said one of my oxen is hekdesh, if he said it about actually oxen, so he only cares about the biggest one. Why? because he said mishvarai. It says echad mishvarai hekdesh. That's one thing, but here he says shor shebishvarai, the shore among my oxen, the ox of my oxen. So that usually means the bestest one. How is that like? Where do we have examples of that in biblical Hebrew? Okay, echad mishvarai. You assume it's the biggest one. If you say shor bishvarai, you're certain it's the biggest one. What's the difference? What's shor shebashvarim? The the ox among oxen. So this is similar to how Rashi, based on Chazal, describes what or explains what adabdam means. What's the expression? What does adam dam mean according to Rashi or yirak rak? Yeah, okay. You're saying that in English. How does he say it in Hebrew? No, no, that's modern Hebrew. Mod yarok mod adom. No, Rashi says adam dam means adom sheba adumim, and yarak rak is yarok sheba yerukim. Okay, it means the reddest of the reds, or the red among reds. In straight literal translation, means red among reds and green among greens. And in more accurate translation, it would be the reddest of the reds or the greenest of the greens. So when he says shore among the ox, shore shebishwarai, the ox among my oxen, it's the first among equals. Right? It's the most ox. Okay, the mostest of the oxen. Okay, that's how we explain this halach over here. Next, perish echad mehan v'shachach. Perish means like hifrish. One of these oxen among the flock. That's the one that's going to be the korban. Shachach. Which one was it? Oshar Marlo Aviv. Echad mehem ekdesh. His father tells him, one of them in the flock you're inheriting over there. That's one of them is a hektish. Well, sorry. If it's talking about oxen, it's not a flock. It's a herd, right? In English, there's an eder. Eder. Is there a different word for herd between son and bakar in Hebrew? I know it's called an eder. That's if it's a flock of sheep or goats, but it's also called an eder of cows, right? In English, there's a difference. Flock is sheep and goats, and a herd is cows. Yeah? That means where they live. That's the enclosure in which they live. Okay. Okay. So let's see here. So he says one's in hektish. Harizim makdish. Which one? Well, yeah. So that's a flock. That's just a herd. Yeah. So in Hebrew, it's the same word. Harizim makdish gadol shebahem. His father said, one of them should be hektish. So he picks the biggest one. So that's how he does discharges his obligation. Or as Rambam said earlier, poteret atzmo. And so to someone who promises to bring a burnt offering from among the herd, the kavan nidro, and he said it basically. Kavan nidro means, like I said, how much it's worth. This one, this type, this one right here. Okay? V'shachach ma kava. And then he forgot, which one was it? Was it even a cow? Okay. Im shori megel, maybe it was an ox, maybe it was a calf. He knows it was one of them. He knows it says this ox or this calf. Now I forgot what he said even. Harei of Ishur. He should bring an ox, assuming he did the better. He set aside the better one. L'cheinim kava bakvasim. Mishachach ma kava. He knows he went out to the sheep and he set aside one as the korbans explicitly. You don't know, wait, is it one of these rams or one of these sheep? Yavi ayil. So let him bring a ram, the bigger one. Kava ba'izim. And he set aside one of the things among the goats. Okay? So what does he do? So he should bring a he-goat. Yavi sa'ir. Okay? What's the feminine of sa'ir? A sa'ira. That's less often. Shachach be'ezah min abema kava ulatho. He even forgot what kind of animal he did. There's 3 types of behemoths that he could bring for a korban. Goat, sheep, or cow. Don't even know what one it was. Okay, forgetful. Yavi shor v'ayal sa'ir. So he has to bring 1 ox and 1 ram and 1 he-goat. All 3. We mistapek lo shema ba'ov kavalato. And if he's even thinking maybe it wasn't even an animal, a domesticated animal, it might have been a bird, Yosef Tor Venyona. So you should bring 1 pigeon and 1 turtle dove. No, he has to bring a korban. He took it by himself, so he brings a korban.
Yeah, but can you take the best one he asked? Yeah.
No, because he knows he dedicated the korban, but he has a suffix that he might have actually done a sheep. Remember, if he said kava a sheep, I promised to bring the sheep. Wakes up the next morning, he's more sober now. He doesn't even know if he said sheep, but he knows he said something explicitly, so he has to assume that it might have been an ox, it might have been a ram, or it might have been a goat.
Yeah, but like the oxen, you say you take the best
Because
one.
yeah, because they're all oxen. He said, "I'm only going to bring one ox." All he has is three oxen. He's certain it's an ox. He just didn't know which one, so he assumes it was the best one.
To exchange the sheep for the.
No, he can't because he might have said actually a sheep. Might have been the thing that came out of his mouth was sheep, in which case he can't bring an ox. He might have said ox, in which case he can't bring a sheep. He might have said goat, in which case he can't bring the other type of two.
You can't,
No, he can't do that. That's halacha. He said that's why min vamin.
like one thing you're allowed to switch with, like a goat with a sheep or something like that.
We saw that there were certain things, but not like this. No, not like this. Yeah, big problem. So watch what you say. Okay, this teaches you be careful. Uh, there's a ravad here that we should learn. Do you have ravad there?
Okay, so
Okay, this is a Mishneh Menachos. No, there's no Ravid there. Okay, that you have to get yourself a Frankel or Korean if you want Ravid. Well,
you told me
that one's a good one because Makbili sent those, and those are good. They have a good commentary, but they don't have Ravid. You know, it's like there's a Chumash out there. It doesn't even have Rashi and Onklus on it. Okay, there's a set of Kumashim. I don't know why they put this out. It doesn't have Trop. It doesn't have Rashi. It doesn't have Onklus. It has a new parish. It says in the spirit of Kasudo. It was you know who that was. So it's like, yeah, but the Chumash itself, it wasn't even written by Kasudo himself. You know, so you took out even the Trop. What's the milo of this Chumash? There's a few volumes over here of their Tanakh. The Trop, the Tamim. Like we were discussing earlier today. What does it even have? How are you supposed to use this? Wasn't? I don't know. I don't know. I think he falls into the category of, keeping the Torah and everything like that, but with a very modern academic twist on it. Either way, so the Chumash, what's it good for? The answer is in the back they have all sorts of illustrations and pictures taken from actual archaeology. It's like they talk about Egypt. They have all these artifacts and pictures from ancient Egypt. Umberto Cassuto was Italian historian, rabbi, scholar of the Hebrew Bible and Ugaritic literature. I think he's what you and I would call Orthodox today. Okay. So there's one that's like in his spirit or all that, but either way, they took out all the things that you wanted, the basic stuff in the Chumash. Das Mikra, for example, it has its own parish on the Torah, but at least it has the Trop and has Rashi also, and the parish on the bottom quotes Chazal and other Rishonim. It's like an art scroll, but this one it's just lacking all sorts of things. Well, yes, and so does Ramban, and so does Ibn Ezra, and so does Rashbam, and so does Onkelos, who came before Rashi. There's all sorts of disagreements in understanding the Torah. I'm not saying it's wrong to disagree with Rashi. I'm trying to say that if I have a basic Chumash and I have something that's its own new thing, explain the Chumash, at least give me something classic also, so I could use it when I want to study the Parsha and Shul or something like that. But they took out everything. There's no Rashi, there's no Onkelos, no Trop even. If you don't have Trop, I can't understand how they took out Trop from the Torah. You can't understand Psukim without the Trop. You have to know where to put the comma. So no, I don't think so. I don't know why you're saying that. I don't think so against the rabbi. No, no, no. Well, I would imagine that they tell guys in Haredi land growing up that everybody who's not one of them is must be up to no good or something. He died in 1951. He was in Italy. It's like Rashi wasn't Haredi either. You know what I even mean? Rabbi Beryl Wine likes to say a lot of people don't have an appreciation for Jewish history and the development of halacha and Jewish philosophy. They learn the Brisker Derech in yeshiva. They think Rambam was a Litvish Jew. Rambam was a Litvak. No, matter of fact, they ask people. There's like what the Rorschach test is, the ink blot test. Oh, we use this mushal all the time. The ink blot test is just a random blobs of ink. The guy spilled ink on the paper and folded it and then opened it up, and there's shapes. It's like looking at clouds. So it's a psychological evaluation. He asks the person to look at this shape, and he tells you, "Oh, that looks like this child jumping rope. It looks like a nice idyllic farm." What he tells you he sees tells you more about what's going on in his head subconsciously than it does what's actually in front of you, which is just a random ink blot. Okay, the ink blot test. So a lot of these, you can ask a diagnostic question. You give a multiple choice question. Maimonides was, okay, if Rambam was around today, he would be Haredi, Satmar, Dati Lumi, a Reform Jew. Okay, what you describe in Rambam in today's terms, like where he would find himself, tells you less about Rambam and more about the guy answering the question. Okay, and his view of the Rambam. It was Sephardi. Oh, okay. Yes, that's true. He called himself. Well, he was Timani, So Timanim would say, "Oh, the Rabbah would have been one of us." Okay, and some people say everybody, in a good sense, everybody wants Rambam to be part of their camp. They think that like we idealize the Rambam, which is why, let's say you go to America, what's named after Rambam throughout America? Just like take New York and Boston, Jewish day schools and hospitals, right? Sometimes libraries. So that's how we idealize him. And like I started before, I think before some guys walked in, said even at that Center for Reform Judaism in Jerusalem, they have a big sign in front. Like their motto is, like the Pidyon Shavuim thing. Who are they quoting? The Rambam. Okay, they're quoting the Rambam. Yeah, that's the problem. It's only 50% Judaism. They're happy to quote the Rambam. Yeah, we want to do like the Rambam, Pidyon Shavuim. But what about the rest of what Rambam said? Oh, that we don't care about. And how you do Pidyon Shavuim. We're only going to say Rambam says Pidyon Shavuim is great, but we're not going to say that the Rambam also says that which we're advocating for, it should not be done. Okay, they always forget that, pick and choose. So it's a good Rorschach test, how people relate to the Rambam and other figures. Well,
they only have part of the Rambam.
They only have part of the Rambam. That's the whole thing. How people relate to the Rambam and how people imagine the Rambam, or where people place the Rambam, tells you more about them than it does about Rambam. Okay, just to know. And that's why we like studying the words of the Rambam. We would hope that we could finish the entire Mishneh Torah and everything the Rambam said, so we get appreciation for his complex ideology and Talmudology, if there's such a word. There's a guy I know who actually that's his website, Talmudology. Okay, so the Rambam has a very complex individual. Certainly, in his own days, there were many who called him the biggest heretic there was. But most people, when it comes to defining what heresy is, whose definitions do they use? The Rambam's, the Shloshis Rei Karim. So very complex, either way. So let's get back to the halacha here. Okay, so the Ravid says, I was saying that it's a shame that you have an edition of the Rambam without the Ravid. Okay, Ravid says, Amar Avram HaMishnah, this is a Mishnah Menachos, the 13th parak, Amara, Yavi Par Ve'egel. Okay, it says that he should bring a par and an egel, one of each. Par and egel are the same species, just one is the adult, one is the younger one. If he said it's going to be something among the sheep, there's a grown one or a young one, he should bring a ram and a talet. That means a young lamb. We'im kava ba'izim v'shachach yavi gediva sa'ir. Okay, if he said he was going to bring something from the goats, and he didn't know what kind of burnt offering it was going to be, so he should bring a young one and an adult one, not like the Rambam said. If he says I'll bring from the animals, the domesticated animals, which there are only 3 types that could be a korban, and he forgot which one it was. I know I said a behema, but I forgot which one it was. Yavi par wa'echel ayil w'taleh ugdi w'sa'ir. 6 animals, a grown ox and a young one, and a full-grown billy goat or he goat and a young goat, and a ram and a young sheep. 6 animals. The Rambam here said, what? Just 3. Okay. Ella shehu l'das Rabbi. That's according to what I just said in the Mishnah. 6 animals total. That's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's opinion. Damar katan vevi gadol lo yatsa, who felt that if a person said, I'm going to bring the younger of the species, like they made a decision, and he ends up bringing an adult of that kind to cover that vow, he hasn't discharged the obligation. But we say of Allah Rabbanon, okay, the rabbis say, if his suffix was it the older kind or the younger kind? I'll assume it was the older kind. They would have made a better promise. So what he has to do is bring the adult kind, like the Rambam said. So this is basically the Rambam's explanation of the Mishnah. Even though the Mishnah seems to say Rabbi Yehuda Nassi's opinion is explicit there, the rest of the sages disagreed. Okay, they said it's good enough. He said you're going to bring a behema, so you assume just the adults of each type of behema. One full-grown goat, one full-grown lamb, and one bull, okay, or an ox. Bull, what we say last week, what's the difference between bull and ox? Really, there's no lemaisa in Hebrew. There's no difference. Just usually par is the type of thing that you're going to eat or bring as a korban, and the shore is the type of thing you use to do work around the farm. You have to pull your wagon and pull your plow, other things. Yeah, aside for work. Okay, let's see the next thing. Let's fill up. It says Das Rashi Hakdusha Eina Chala Me'asma Ala Gadol Levado El Yesh Lechalel Kedushat HaBenoni Ala Gadol. Remember that says that the Benoni also. The Korean people have added us a good note saying Rashi says that you should somehow take the kedusha and lechalel, okay, transpose that onto the bigger animal. Have you ever done pidyon meiser sheni? Really?
Oh yeah.
You've done it. You've taken meiser sheni. Well, so what do you do? Yeah. So what do you do with those coins afterwards? No, you don't get rid of them. You have to spend it on money on food in Jerusalem. But the problem is you can only do that when the temple's standing. So what do? Nowadays they have a trick. So really the Meiser Sheni, this is good to review because people are actually, every day people are asking about Meiser Sheni. Okay? There's still Meiser Sheni on what? Citrus fruits and things like that. People are picking fruit. So there's Meiser Sheni this year. And next year is going to be Meiser Ani. So Meiser Sheni is redeemed. Why? Really you're supposed to hold on to the Meiser Sheni and bring it up when you go up on pilgrimage. So use that you eat that. Yeah, you eat those apples, but usually it's not going to last. The food, it's a perishable food. So you exchange it for coins. You do the chilul. You take the kedusha from Meiser Sheni, the fruit, and you put it onto your pruta chamura, your coins, and you use that money to buy food within Jerusalem instead of the Meiser Sheni itself. It's arta kesef. And nowadays, it's been a few years since we've had a temple. So in the last year of the cycle, basically year 4, year 7, the year after you have this. So the poskim say nowadays, Rabbi Avi Yosef's trick, you exchange that pruta for sugar. There's a basic food substance, and you dissolve the sugar. Just wash it away. Yeah. No, that's what they do.
You're allowed to speak.
Yeah. That's what they do. So that doesn't go. That's because you can't eat it. There's no way out of it.
How can you? It's like taking shmita stuff and throwing it.
No, because not shmita. Shmita says vayalachem leochla.
So and like
it's different. It's some sort of kedusha to it that we let a lot of kedusha go to waste. Every time you take truma, you don't give it to the kohen. What happens to it? Yeah. It's a problem. Shemitah, you're not supposed to let that happen too, but apparently there's other things. Yeah, what are you going to do there? What's the difference? Shemitah has a special teaching that it should be lo'ochla. Not supposed to let it go to waste. Well,
you're not allowed to buy with the patio boat.
Not allowed to. I know that you're supposed to eat it, but it's a different halachic category.
You don't have to eat it?
No, not necessarily.
So you can buy it with you can take a bunch.
No, but you can't spend it on other stuff. You can't buy clothing with it.
Not clothing like that.
You can't buy a hammer with it.
I can it on a fix.
No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Because it got to be a food stuff, and then the food stuff you destroy. Yeah. And isn't it a good question? It's a decent question. Also, Shemitah has a different standard. What did they used to do in the olden days when how did they used to dye clothing? Where did they get dye from? Tseva. Where did they make it from?
Food.
Yeah. Oh, but the food, isn't that food? Bal tashnis? No, you use it for dyeing certain berries and things like that. In Shemitah, you're not allowed to do that. Yeah, there's rules against that because but normal crop, the Kohen technically, he could give his truma, by the way, his truma tamea, he burns it, uses it as fuel, and his regular truma he could feed to slaves and animals, right? technically, but you can't give it to animals, and you're not supposed to give it to the slaves. You have to go up to Jerusalem and eat it yourself. It's to be eaten in Jerusalem, but not the same ochla as in Shemitah. That is whatever it is. Chazal saw there was a difference that the way the pasuk says it. Vitzarta kesef, v'natata kesef, v'chlo asher te'aveh nafshecha b'bakar v'tzarn v'ray shechar, v'chlo asher te'aveh nafshecha. It's about taiva. Yeah, anything like that. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to eat. And if you can't eat it, but there's no Beis Hamikdash, and the Beis Hamikdash isn't around, you can't do it. So you destroy it. No Beis Hamikdash. Shemitah, by the way, this is a very important sugya in the Rambam. The Rambam, by the way, it's subject highly to dispute. Like every page of the Rambam is disagreed on by the Ravid and others. To the extent, what extent do we keep Shemitah nowadays? You know, and Shemitah itself is independent of the Beis Hamikdash. It's about Bias Kulchem and Kedusha Rishona, Kedusha Shnia, but the Beis Hamikdash is always Kadosh. So it's very interesting. So the Beis Hamikdash, it's interesting. The Kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash was never undone. It's always been the same Kedusha since Bias Rishon. Yet there's certain commandments of the Beis Hamikdash that just don't apply, like Bikurim and Meiser Sheni. Yet the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael went bye-bye for a good 70 years and then came back. And then it came back in a different form. Yet its mitzvahs don't apply except B'Dirabanan. Isn't that strange? Like Meiser Sheni. Yeah, and Shemitah. That's the best example. And Trumas and Meisers, according to the Rambam. So yeah, it's very strange. It's very strange that that's how it works. Not any Kedusha. The Kedusha Sa'aretz. The Kedusha Mikdash is not, according to the Rambam. So that's the big issue. Of course, then the Ravid disagrees, and there's big nafkaminas la'alacha. So yeah, you can't just equate the two types of mitzvahs and say like, oh, why does Meiser Sheni have this din, and Shemitah food that din? Different things altogether. Yeah, Meiser Sheni combines. It has a factor involving the mikdash and the mitzvahs of Tulios Ba'aretz. You know, like Bikurim. Yeah, there's a lot to say about this. Okay, each and everything in due time. So let's see this next halacha. Where are we here? Harei alayla mizbeach. Wait 1 second. I lost this. Oh, here it is. Nadar toda ushlamim. So is neder is to bring Thanksgiving offering or peace offering to God. The kavani droba bakar, and he set his offering is supposed to be something from the ox, the cows, from the flock over here, the herd. What does it say here? And he sort of forgot what kind. Okay, yeah. So we didn't know which kind he was supposed to bring in. Up till this point, we've been discussing burnt offerings, and burnt offerings always have to be male. So now he says peace offering or Thanksgiving offering, that could be male or female. So he knows that it came from the bovine, so now he has to bring 1 bull and 1 cow. So too, if he has some sort of suffix developed with regards to the sheep, vi aisle v'rachel. So he doesn't know male or female, could be either, unlike the burnt offerings, which are always male. So he has to bring 1 ram and 1 ewe, E-W-E. Nistapek lo ba'izim. He has also a suffix here. Oh man, was it a he-goat or a she-goat? Yavi sa'ir us-ira. So you should bring 1 he-goat and 1 she-goat. Shachach be'ezam min kavanidro. And now he forgot, oh, what species was this even? And it could be a toda, it could be a shlamim. So he has to bring, 6 animals. Paru farah. He brings a bull and a cow and a ram and a ewe and a he-goat and a she-goat. Wow. All 6 offerings. It's quite an expense. Next time, know what you say. Ha'omer harei alai olaf of. Person says, I'm going to bring a burnt offering of birds. Mevi tor o ben yonah. So he just has to bring 1 bird. So he brings, it's either a pigeon or a turtle dove. Ben yonah means the young kind. Peresh, but if he actually said, I'm going to bring one of these types, and he actually said whether it's a pigeon or a turtle dove, they forgot which one it was. Mevi tor ben yonah. So he has to actually bring 1 of each, 1 pigeon and 1 turtle dove. Nowadays, I wonder how people do this. Do people actually cultivate these things? They actually keep dovecotes and all sorts of birds around? In the olden days, it was a very easy thing to do, and many people did it. But nowadays, it's not so much. It's very simple. I mean, most people, you have a little bit of a wooden roof or a little hole in your attic or somewhere. You likely have pigeons there. I see, find nests all the time. And this roof, for example, above us, above the ceiling, you could hear sometimes there's quite a few pigeons there. They're nesting up here and also on top of the shul on the other side. So they're pretty common. The question is, how do you get your hands on them, and how do you make sure they don't fly away? It's a good one. Let's see. Next, Haomer Hareal Laila Mizbeach. He's saying, I'm going to bring something to the altar. So what? Wow, that could be a whole bowl with its attendant meal offerings and libations, or it could be just a little bit of wood. Yavi kometz levona. So the minimum here is a little, not even a handful, 3 fingers full, as article says, of frankincense, the spice that's supposed to be brought along with the meal offerings. Shein lecha davar shekarev kulo lamizbeach kamuchahu elo levona. The only thing that could actually be brought as is, without anything else done to it, is frankincense. Everything else has a whole process. It has to be slaughtered. It has to be cooked. It has to be ground up into, there's all sorts of things. Lavona, there's nothing that's done to it. Even meal offerings, you have to mix the oil into them, for example. In this case, it's the simplest thing one could bring is one dose, one portion of frankincense. Peirash nidro, he explicated his neder. V'shachach ma piresh. He knows he said something, he just doesn't know what. Yavi mikol davar shekarev kulo lamizbeach. So he has to bring one of every basic category that can be brought to the altar. V'fichach mevi olat beima. So he should bring a burnt offering of an animal, like let's say whatever it is, usually a male. So it has to be one ox, one lamb, or one goat. Will a lot of, and he should bring the burnt offering of a bird, means one pigeon dove or one turtle, one pigeon, one turtle dove, uminchat nesachim, and the attendant libations, the meal offerings and libations, ulavona, and some frankincense, uyayin bifnei atzmo, and also an offering of wine independent of the nesachim for those animals. Wow, that's a lot. So, and when it says minchat nesachim, we already said that includes oil. Okay. Let's see, next halacha. Amar harei alai basela mizbeach. He says, I'm going to bring something of the value of a sela. So a sela is a significant amount of money there, okay, for the altar. Yavi keves. So he should bring a lamb. Why? Because that's usually that value. Like last time we discussed, this was 2 weeks ago, that silver, thank God, maintains its value. We checked, we saw that what a certain amount of silver is described by the Gemara being able to buy in terms of animals is similar to what that amount of silver can still buy. Silver is a good way to store value, and that's why sages use the silver standard. So there's nothing that could be brought that's basically worth of a sela than a lamb. Peirash v'shachach ma peirash. But he then said, I intend to bring something of the value of a sela, and he actually said what type of animal it was, but he doesn't remember what it was. Yavi b'sela mikol davar v'davar shekarev lamizbeach. So he has to bring a sela's worth of each of these over here. So one sela worth perhaps an olas behema, and one sela of olas oaf. If you could find such a thing, you could say there's no such thing as an olas oaf that would cost a sela, and the minchas nesachim worth of a sela, and a sela's worth of golbanum, frankincense over here. But that's kalbana is golbanum. That's a mistake, and yayin, and wine. So that's that's quite expense. Yeah. So how many sellers does this come out to? Let's count it over here. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 sellers worth. Okay. So the person says, I intend to bring frankincense to the mizbeach. So no less than 3 fingers full. Or 4 fingers if you go by the Rambam. He said, I'm going to bring some wood for the all mizbeach, for the altar's pyre. Lo yivchot mishneh gzarim. So no less than 2 logs. Ovyan kimluchukot gorkan ama. So their length should be like machakot. What's a machok? So nowadays, modern Hebrew word machak means an eraser, and machok in this case is the level. It's not the type of level that you see if let's say a surface is balanced. It's a type that it's a device, basically a stick that they use to push the excess amount of the solid that's being measured using dry measures. So if I, let's say, would take a cup, let's say this is a larger cup, usually I was measuring flour in here. So I take the machok and I go across with like that to make sure there's no extra and that everything, the exact amount is right there. That's called the machok. And the rakan is amma, and they should have a length of an amma. So a machok has a certain width to it. That's what it says over here. You can't just use a stick, any other stick. It has to have a certain width. That way, let's say you're using people level sand. They're going to put down a patio, so they have to make that the the surface, the ground they dug up, and they put down sand so that the base ground underneath the new patio, where they're going to put the brickwork, is perfectly level. So they use a large stick of a certain width and I guess density, so that it has the capacity to level the ground there, and it should have an almost length. We said an almost about 48 centimeters or a foot and a half or so, and that's what he should bring. Two logs of that kind. That's the basic offering of wood in the temple. Harayalai eitz. If he says I'm going to bring wood, not eitzim, mevi gezer echad. So he brings one log, or koama, also the length of an amma. Or if he wants to just bring its value in silver. Now, by the way, that's why the modern Hebrew word for money is still silver. So we should bring that. Oh, halachas here. Okay. Mishneh daro nadev shemen. Person made a promise or voluntarily wants to bring shemen. Remember we said neder and nadava. What's the difference? Okay, so sometimes it's he's going to bring this particular oil, so or you can just say I'm going to bring oil stam. Okay, and we said that. What does that mean? It means that if it says this particular oil, so now he's going to have to, if that oil somehow gets disposed of or is taken away from him, so he's not responsible to bring it. He was supposed to be this oil, but if he says I'm going to somehow bring oil, it's talking about himself, that he has this obligation upon himself, so he has to somehow, I guess, replace that oil. He lost some oil, sacrificial oil, so he has to find something else. Ketzado simbo. So he's just going to bring oil. Normally, oil is not poured on the altar. Oil is mixed in with the meal offerings. So if he just has oil, there is a way. The Mishnah mentioned this. There is a way to actually just offer the oil independently. Kometz mimenu kometz. So he lifts out some of the oil. He scoops up some of the oil with his fingers. Unotena lav melach, and he should put some salt on it. By the way, he doesn't do the kometzing. I think it's the Kohen has to do the kometzing. Is this something that a Kohen has to do? Normally, when we're talking about an actual meal offering, it's required that the Kohen himself do it. And only the Kohen could do this. So is this considered something only the Kohen can do? And the rest, it's like a mincha. The rest of the oil is eaten by the Kohanim like any other meal offering. So what do Kohanim do with oil? So like other things that they're given in the temple, it's their choice how to eat it, just like their meat. So in this case, I turn the oil into some sort of condiment. Like nowadays, what do they do with oil? You put things like garlic, oregano, and of course, za'atar. That's a big one. You mix oil and za'atar, and people use that as a dip for their bread. So that's something they could do. Hold on. Okay, good. Osin, haba bifnei atzmo. What do we do with wine that's just brought on its own? Normally, wine is brought as part of, remember, minchas nesachim. It's brought with an animal. It's proper. You bring meat to God, so you should bring bread and wine. What about just wine unto its own? No love melach. So if a person is voluntarily brought, let's say, a log, okay, 3 logs of wine is basically 12 revius. Okay, 12 revius of a log. Revius is usually of a log. A log is about, we said, the minimum is 300 ml. So 3 log or so is about a liter. It's actually a little bit more than that. If we say Rabbi Avi Noah's opinion. So it comes out just more than a liter. So a person's giving a liter bottle of wine, so he has to put salt on it. Why? Because we saw. So it's a requirement that every korban come with salt. So he puts some salt into the wine. And then it's poured over those pipes, just like all the other libations. We said that there's a place up, and we're going to see this in the next set of halachas. That's how the Quam do it. There was it says it was like nostrils there, the bowl-shaped receptacle at the top of the altar. That's where they put the libations. While if it's just frankincense, on its own, no he should salt some of it once again and just put it directly onto the fire. Mishnadar neder. Lo yavi enu mimaot maaser sheni. Oh, we're talking about maaser sheni again. Maaser sheni is, like we said, it's it's the redemption money. Either it was the actual produce that's in Jerusalem, or he's exchanged his produce for money, and he's supposed to use that money to buy food for himself to eat when he makes his way to Jerusalem, and he's supposed to eat it there. And instead, he's using these funds for what? Oh, he's he has a neder. He says, okay, well, I promised to bring God a burnt offering of a sheep, so I'll use some of my Sheni money for that purpose. Sharid chayav b'korban zeh. No, he can't do it. He has his own obligation, independent obligation. He has to bring this korban, and he can't say he's going to combine it. Well, he has to spend this money anyways, so use it for that. Whoever has to bring a korban, the money he uses, he expends on this korban has to be entirely chulin. Chulin means secular. It cannot have been dedicated for some other purpose. You can't say, well, even tzedakah money, technically speaking, he's supposed to give the tzedakah to the poor. Now he has an obligation to do so. So it can't be holy in any way. The money can't have any other mitzvah that needs to be done with this money. It has to be perfectly free money. By free, I mean free of obligation. Amar, hare alai toda mina chulin. A person said, I promise to God, I'll bring a Thanksgiving offering from the chulin. The lachma mina maaser. But the bread, remember, a Thanksgiving offering has a lot of bread that comes with it. He says, I'm going to somehow pay for the bread because I'm going to be eating that in Jerusalem. I'm going to eat that with my friends. So I'll use the Meiser Sheni funds to purchase the flour to make that bread, or I'll go to the baker who makes lach metoda and I'll pay him with Meiser Sheni money. Lo yavi lachma ela min achulin. Can't do that. He's supposed to make sure that the funds that he uses to pay for this bread or the materials he uses to make this bread have to also be chulin, secular, not dedicated for any holy purpose. Sharei nadar bekorban tudah, because he promised to bring God a Thanksgiving offering. Vatudah ina ba'a ela im halechem. And a critical component, so the Torah can only come, the Thanksgiving offering is only brought to God with bread. Okay, so no tricks. No tricks and no shticks. Ooh, another good halacha here. Let me see here. No, here. Pirash v'amar harei alai lavi todah mima'oth maaser sheni. Let's say a person says, I promise to bring God a Thanksgiving offering from my Meiser Sheni money. Oh boy. That's funny. V'lachma min achulin. And I'll bring his bread from outside funds or some completely non-dedicated money. Yesh lo lavi k'moshe nadar. So that he can do. And if he didn't end up actually paying for this Toto with Meiser Sheni money, he also used chulin for that. He's also good. He's discharged obligation. Let's say he said, I'm going to bring a Todah. I want to bring a Thanksgiving offering to God. It says both it, the actual korban, the animal, and the bread that comes with it shall be paid for with Meiser Sheni funds. That he can do. But he shouldn't bring the lechem from wheat that actually was Meiser Sheni. Ella mima'oth Maaser Sheni. Rather, money that had already been exchanged for Maaser Sheni. Just like the animal itself isn't Maaser Sheni. Remember, the animal can't be Maaser Sheni. Maaser Sheni is only produce. The animal is brought with funds for Maaser Sheni. So too, the bread has to be bought with funds from Maaser Sheni. Can't wait. They're going to build a temple. People are going to have to go over these halachas a lot more. There's an interesting sugya over here that we talk about how you take a kometz of olive oil. So there's they say there's mefarshim. They're brought over here komso yikpenu. You have to somehow congeal the oil. Nowadays, there's a way. What happens if you put, let's say, olive oil? We're talking about olive oil in this case. Does olive oil freeze? Well, olive oil does have a freezing point. If you put olive oil in your kitchen freezer, will it freeze? It'll become more viscous. It's sometimes there are some freezers are able to actually solidify it, but it's not something they could have just done in the base of mikdash whenever they wanted to. So they add here uvnogel leofen hakmitza yesh kama diot. How do you actually take a kmitza of oil? So they're saying so das rabino gershom yakpiyat hashemen v'chein yikmos mimenu. Sema you solidify it. I didn't never like this modern Hebrew word. The modern Hebrew word to freeze something, which I usually thought make it very cold. Okay, so usually things that are frozen go from solid to from liquid to solid, right? So for water, like it makes sense that to freeze something makes the water turn solid. That's usually what the Torah is talking about, things that become from more solid, at least more viscous, or even solid. The problem is we use in English to freeze something. We even talk about solids. You could freeze meat. Meat is solid. It just becomes rock solid and much harder when you freeze it. And so too other foods. We freeze vegetables. Chazal wouldn't consider, let's say, a piece of broccoli or a cucumber something that you could freeze. It could make it very cold, but there's no way to solidify it. It's already solidified. So that was a problem, with the language. There's a language problem here. But somebody says komtso. His exact words are komtso. So Rabbeinu Gershom says yikpenu. He should congeal it somehow. How do you willfully bring oil to the temple and cause it to congeal without a refrigerator? Without, I don't know how they meant to do this. He's not talking about perfectly clear oil. It's not the cleanest oil. Somehow, because there's so many solids in it, there's actually a way you could actually pick out some of it. It says here, Mikdash David says this. Shnam b'deos elu. Hezber achar mofia b'tosfos yontif and the Tiferes Yisrael. What do they say? L'da'atam hakmitza naset idea for shat shemen b'shiur kometz unetiyato lekli. Because Rambam said a kometz is basically comes out to 2 olives worth. You basically use a vessel to separate them. You take a measuring cup, take a spoon somehow, okay, and put that into a sacrificial vessel, like any other kmitza, a flour. Omnam Rabbi Mikshu al Devrehem Shekain Asur Lasot Midala Kometz El Yesh Lakomet Lakmotz Biado Mamash. Problem is if you use this cleat to scoop it out, the spoon or the measuring cup, you're actually measuring. And a kometz is supposed to be with your fingers in exact. Yeah, it's kind of going to come out to no less than 2 olives worth, as the Rambam says. So this is something that's we have yet to see. We don't have historical tradition what exactly was done. You can see the fact is that among the Rishonim, there's no one who says positively. They're all offering ideas. So I guess this thing will wait for a future Sanhedrin to decide how it should be done. Or they could just say, please, no offerings of oil. I don't know. Even though this previous case, this person said, I intend to bring the bread of my Thanksgiving offering. It should come from Meiser Sheni funds. Lo yavi nisacheha mimaoth maser sheni. The actual meal offering and libation that accompanies the korban, that which is put on the mizbeach, not the bread he's going to eat with it, that should not come from Meiser Sheni funds. The libations can only come from chulin. Moshe B'Yarnu, as we said. Says the person bring the korban has to bring it. Ad shiyu mishalo. That has to actually be his. Meiser Sheni money is not really his. They can't have any part of God's share in there. It has to be entirely his. It's almost a good time to stop. Here the Aruch HaShulchan says, oh, look at that. Lo yavi gambi bikurim uminata ravai. In this case also, bikurim, supposed to bring those to the Kohen. So you can't bring some of the nesachim from that. Say, well, it's going to go to the Kohen anyway, so we'll just tell the Kohen this has to be poured on the Mizbeach, or from Neta Revai. Neta Revai is the 4th year of the fruit of the tree. The first 3 years it's entirely forbidden. That's Orla. The 4th year is sort of like Meiser Sheni. Yeah, it's Shein on the Sachim, Bain Olam Elamin Achulin, according to the Tosafos, Kol Davar Sheon Nechal, like let's say a burnt offering, anything that's not eaten, Lo Yaviu Mima'oth Maser Sheni Gam Kishit. No, if it's a burnt offering, for example, they can't eat. He shouldn't make a stipulation that this animal is going to be brought from Meiser Sheni money. Why? Because Meiser Sheni money is supposed to be spent on food. We'll close with the blessing that before the war, we were praying that we live to see these halachas put into practice, that we live to see the construction of the temple. I pray that right now, the current situation, we find ourselves able to overcome that which is holding us back. See that really Hashem has given us the capacity to do whatever He wants us to do. We just have to go up and do it. We have to remind ourselves of that. We have to, I guess, wake up. Being woke nowadays, not such a good thing. But if you get an awakening to Judaism, awakening to what the Torah is actually asking of us, that would go a long way. The problem is we don't know what to ask for. We have to. I think the strongest form of kiruv is to help other Jews know what to ask for. Remind them that we're in this together. Just like we have to. Unfortunately, if we don't work together, let's say to build a temple, then we'll be forced to work together fighting a war. Yes, it brings about achdus, but it would be better if we had achdus in a constructive purpose instead of for a defensive purpose. Have a Shabbat Shalom, and may this and all the other fast days be turned into Yomim Tovim forevermore. Be good.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.